Chapter 9. The Blythe Girls, Helen, Margie, and Rose by Laura Lee Hope. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 9. New Acquaintances. Rose could have hugged the bald but genial Mr. Paul C. Carruthers with a good will, but knowing that such a procedure was neither proper nor in good taste, she controlled the impulse. As for the great man himself, having given orders to a black-haired, haughty young woman concerning Rose, he seemed suddenly to have lost all interest in the girl, turning back with frowning concentration to the reading of the letter which Rose's entrance had interrupted. Rose looked sideways at the haughty young person as they stepped into the elevator together, and the latter condescended to grin good-naturedly. "Startin' in right, girlie," she informed the half-elated and half-frightened Rose. "Took me 3 years to get to the artificial posies, and here you are stepping right into the place the first thing. Paul C. must have thought you belonged with the flowers or something. Say, girlie, is your middle name Rose?" "No, but my first one is," replied Rose with a chuckle, and the haughty one's black eyes opened in a stare of disbelief. "Go on now, you're kidding," she remarked. But the stopping of the elevator at the third floor put an end to conversation and precipitated them both into a swaying mob of bargain seekers. "Say, ain't this the limit?" said Rose's guide over her shoulder as she deftly elbowed a way through the crowd to the millinery counter. "They've got some of our fancy stuff like feathers and velvet posies marked down to about half price. Note the riot." By this time Rose was thoroughly enjoying herself. She liked this slangy and ungrammatical but good-natured new acquaintance immensely. The thrill of having landed a job had whipped her cheeks to a deep pink and filled her eyes with sparkling imps of mischief. She was so buoyant and sanguine that even those in the bargain-mad crowd felt it and turned to stare after her admiringly. Half an hour later found Rose installed in her position behind the millinery trimmings counter. Rose's partner behind the counter was the same black-haired and haughty young person who had guided her from the office of Paul C. Carruthers to her present comparatively lowly position. Not that Rose considered it lowly. No, indeed. She was to have many greater triumphs in the days and years to come, but none that would ever seem more important or thrilling to her than this first step on the ladder of success. The name of her new acquaintance was Annabelle Black, a name which seemed very fitting to Rose, for Annabelle's hair and eyes could not have been blacker than they were, and Annabelle's eyebrows were so black and heavy that they well nigh met above her rather large but well-formed nose. This girl was only a year or so older than Rose herself, yet she seemed years older. In fact, was years older in experience. Nevertheless, she was very kind to Rose, and the latter wondered more than once during the next few crowded hours what she would have done without Annabelle Black. "You won't have much to do today, girlie," her new friend whispered to her during a moment when the milling crowd about the counter seemed to offend a little. "Just keep your ears and eyes wide open and let me and Bertie do the real work. Tomorrow you can start in being a slave too." The girl Annabelle had referred to as Bertie interested Rose immensely. She seemed such a quiet, demure little person, and yet was so surprisingly efficient. More than once Rose found herself watching the movement of those deft fingers with something like fascination. Bertie was small, with brown eyes, straight wispy hair of a neutral tone, and a white, tired little face whose expression of quiet endurance made Rose Blythe's heart ache. Bertie was everywhere at once, with a soft word for this frantic customer, a helpful suggestion for an undecided one, never cross, never snappy, like Annabelle, never insolent. But Rose noticed, she had plenty of time to notice everything during that long afternoon, since she was permitted to handle only the smallest and most insignificant of orders, that in spite of her efficiency and good manners, Bertie was consistently snubbed, not only by Annabelle Black, but by other girls at nearby counters. None of them worked half as hard or as faithfully as she, yet they made a great show of work and patronized the girl as from some loftier plane. This attitude both puzzled and angered Rose, for she had liked the quiet, mouse-like girl at first sight, and felt inclined to champion her. She became even more determined in this course after she met Mr. Herbert Schomburg. Mr. Herbert Schomburg was a floor walker, but one would have thought him, seeing him sauntering importantly among the aisles and counters of his domain, at least a king. He was a portly man and tall. He must have stood 6'2" in his stocking feet. He was distinguished looking too, and handsome after a fashion. Because of all this, Rose was at a loss that first day to explain her strong aversion to the man. He was pleasant to her, too. As he neared the counter behind which Annabelle and Bertie worked, and she looked on, his roving eye happened to light upon Rose, and he seemed to hurry his sauntering pace, shoving ruthlessly through the crowd of bargain seekers. While the already overworked Bertie took complete charge of the trimming counter, the black-eyed Annabelle proceeded languidly to introduce the new goil. Mr. Herbert Schomburg, while characteristically condescending, was genuinely impressed by the latter's good looks and took small pains to disguise this fact. He leaned over the counter and talked to her in a low tone, as casual and unhurried as though there were no frantic crowds milling about his elbows. "I hope you will like it here, Miss Blythe," he began, and went on to say that she would be expected to attend the store school 1 or 2 mornings a week in order to master the rudiments of selling which she had not gained by experience. Rose was eager to do this, as she was eager for anything that would advance her in her chosen work, and said so with enthusiasm. Mr. Schomburg evidently approved of both the enthusiasm and the girl, and ended by shaking hands with her and hoping they would be the best of friends. As he turned away, Rose felt a little ashamed of her instinctive dislike of him, for he had certainly been very kind and encouraging. But the next moment something happened that immeasurably strengthened that dislike. It had to do with the quiet, mouse-like girl, Bertie. All this time, while Annabelle Black and the other girls in the vicinity had been giving one ear to their customers and the other to the conversation between Rose and the floor walker, Bertie had been conscientiously attending to her own business, and some of Annabelle's as well. As Herbert Schomburg turned away from Rose, smiling benignly, it happened that Bertie handed a package to the wrong customer. She perceived her mistake instantly, but before she could rectify it, the woman to whom the package really belonged set up a hue and cry. "That careless girl!" she cried, glaring at the hapless Bertie, while Mr. Schomburg stopped to see what the trouble was. "If I had not had my eyes about me, I would have been out a willow plume." Bertie retrieved the package and handed it to the outraged customer. "Here is your package, ma'am," she said. "I noticed my mistake as soon as I made it. You never were in any danger of losing your plume." "The idea!" cried this unpleasant customer, rudely snatching at her plume and favoring Bertie with a parting glare. "You had better not be impudent, miss, or I will report you to the management." The woman was lost in the crowd, and Rose noticed with pity that Bertie was trembling all over as she faced the annoyed frown of Mr. Herbert Schomburg. "That's the second time you've made a mistake in 1 week, Miss North," said the latter in a tone of severe reprimand. "If it happens again, I shall be forced to take a complaint to the office myself." He turned away and marched commandingly through the mob, while Bertie stared after him with a tragic white face.
"Well, ain't he the mean thing!"
exclaimed Annabelle Black, as she put up a hand to rearrange her elaborate coiffure.
"Always looking for trouble, he is. Just the same, Bertie," she added, with her patronizing air, "you better ought to be more careful, you know. Think before you act is my motto in life."
It was late, and the bargain rush had thinned to a small dribble of customers before Rose had a chance to speak to the overworked Bertie. Then she waited until Annabelle was engaged with an exacting customer before she dared make any overture. "I wonder if you can't catch your breath long enough to answer a question?" she said in an undertone. The other girl looked at her in surprise. Then she smiled slowly, and Rose was amazed at the difference that smile made. "I reckon I could," she admitted, "if it was very important." "Then why?" demanded Rose with a vehement sweep of her hand about the place. "Do you stand for the way people treat you here?" The girl looked at her curiously for a moment, then smiled bitterly. "If you had an invalid mother who depended on your little bit of pay, maybe you'd stand things too," she answered wearily. End of chapter 9.